it became so obvious to me that if I accepted my pain and I worked through it, that the change would become automatic in my life. And the way that I like to describe it is if you take your hand and you put it on a hot stove, you don't sit there and think, that's hot. You don't have to think about it. You just pull it away. The change is automatic. And that's the way I think about pain in our lives is when we are in pain, if we allow that pain to motivate us to do the right thing, we end up in a better place. And that really is the story of my life and the story of the book.
We Rad Dads, bringing a soft edge to a hard topic. Join us every week as we talk to real people with real stories, from the everyday single parent to family professionals, and find entertainment along the way. Join me, Walter J. Eggers, as I discover and share wisdom. Positive changes start here. Episode 30. Hello, Rad Dads. Walter John Eggers here again with you for the We Rad Dads podcast. Thank you for joining me. It is an absolute pleasure to not only have you here, but to do what I do. I love to connect my guests to you. And if this is your first time, welcome. Thanks for joining us. I hope you find what you're looking for, and know that all of our resources, links, contacts to all of our guests are available at the We Rad Dads home base. That's www.weraddads.com. Also, join us for our Facebook group discussions. There's a lot going on Facebook that just doesn't happen on the podcast or anywhere else. So that is where we're building the tribe of Rad Dads. So come join us. Be involved. And speaking of involved, my guest this week talks highly about being vulnerable, getting out there, and overcoming your own self. As men, we want to isolate. We want to figure out on our own. We don't need maps or directions or instruction manuals, but the reality is we need a brotherhood. We need each other. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. My guest this week is an author by the name of Damon Stoddard. Now, Damon, like a lot of guys I'm meeting now, probably didn't expect to become an author. He probably didn't expect a lot of things, like being exposed to a tumultuous situation at the age of 4. That really didn't stop, and ended when his family split and ended up in a foster home by himself, separated from his sisters and brothers. It is an amazing story, and it's chronicled entirely in his book, Pain Drives Change. Now, Rad Dads, it's not all doom and gloom, because I guarantee you there's a happy ending. And Damon today is an amazing voice for change. And an aptly titled book, right? But you can hear the calm in his voice, and he's been through the racket. And he gives us all kinds of tactics, like self-fulfilling affirmations, right? Like dealing with the pain of your childhood and the abandonment issues he exposed, and the eventual realization of a disorder he has. He's open and honest throughout, and I'm really excited about getting this interview right into your ears. So stand by for my interview with Damon Stoddard. Hello and welcome back again, Rad Dads. I am always excited to have you join us, and this week is absolutely no exception. This week, I have author Damon Stoddard joining us. Damon, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. The more and more I know of your story, and the more I read in your book here, it just blows me away continually. I absolutely love it.
Thanks a lot.
Damon, you're a father. You're a blended dad. You have 4 kids. You're divorced and now remarried. You got all this stuff, awesome stuff happening over there in Seattle, of all places. How's the scene there in Seattle?
It's pretty awesome. This time of the year is incredible over here. I started doing triathlons about 4 years ago, and I get to bike to work in the morning and go swimming on Lake Sammamish and watch the sun come up, and it's pretty awesome this time of the year in Seattle, I got to tell you.
Yeah, it sounds really blissful. I've been through Seattle, but I haven't been able to spend any quality time there, and so
Man, it's definitely one of the Pacific Northwest kind of a gem. I'd love to go in and experience that here at some point.
Yeah, you know what I probably should say is it's really awful here this time of the year.
Yeah,
It
right?
rains all the time. It's cold, dreary. You don't want to come up here.
See, you totally
that
missed
way
that
we'll,
opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, that way traffic will die down a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah.
So Damon, I mentioned it a second ago, but you're the author of a book called Pain Drives Change. And first of all, I want to recognize that title. Totally just, I locked eyes with it and I was like, yeah, okay, I really need to, dive into this. And once I did, it was, wow, it's full of so many nuggets. So thanks for sitting down and writing the book. Well, I'm sure we'll get into a lot more about the book, but, I want to know a little bit more about you. So a snapshot of you today, fill in any blanks that I left behind.
Yeah. So, first of all, I am remarried. Have a beautiful wife, Debbie. We've been married for 12 years and it just gets better and better all the time. It was really because of her that I was able to write the book. Debbie has a daughter, Amanda, 22 years old. She's getting married this year. Beautiful young lady. Couldn't be prouder of her. My daughter, Monica, is 18. She's 3 years clean and sober and doing incredibly well. She
Good for her.
has a job as a Y camp counselor now. And she just found out that she's going to be teaching English in Thailand.
Awesome.
This winter. So I just couldn't be more proud of her. And then Debbie and I have a daughter, Noelle, who's 10. She's just got a heart of gold, always asking the question, one of my favorite questions, how can I help? And then my son, Nathan, going to be an engineer, brought him to work the other day. They both learned how to code at Microsoft, and he loves football. I'll be coaching him in football here in a couple of weeks. So
Wow, that's awesome. Your boy's 8 and he's learned to code already?
yeah, we just Microsoft has a thing called Bring Your Kid to Work Day, and that was Friday, and brought them both in, and they learned how to code software, and it was just amazing. I mean, just amazing.
The capability of children in technology is absolutely blows me away.
Yeah.
I see it every day with my son and smartphones. It's just like, it's so intuitive. It's literally scary to me.
Yeah, to think that computers didn't exist when I was his age.
Right.
I can tell you a little bit about how old I am.
Hey, I'm right in the same boat with you. It's funny how things change, and you think about like, okay, well, what's it going to be like when my kids are my age now? What are they going to be like? I can't believe my kid knows this. What is that thing?
Who knows? I mean, yeah.
So you work for Microsoft. That's a very high caliber job up there. What do you do for Microsoft?
Yeah, so I actually work for Microsoft IT, and I'm a process improvement specialist. If there's anybody out there that develops software, I'm an agile software development coach.
Wow.
And really just try to continuously improve the way that we deliver software.
That is a huge stretch from the rest of the foundations of your story as I know it.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to hear how we bridge that gap.
Yeah.
So we'll get there. Hey, Rad Dads, yeah, I got a little inside info, but rest assured that we'll dig into it and we'll figure out the whole story here. And I got to tell you, it just stay tuned because it's something absolutely amazing. And of course, you write about it, and that's what the book is about. Pain Drives Change.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get to know you a little bit more. So, can you tell us about, maybe some formative thing you did or were a part of, or a trend or style or something that happened when you were like, I don't know, teenage-ish or young man status where now you're just like face palm moment. Like, I can't believe, yeah, there's a picture of it somewhere and every time you see like,
the mullet.
Yeah.
It was the mullet, man. I had hair down to the middle of my back, short on the sides, hair down the middle of my back. And I used to have a blow dryer, and I'd blow dry the back of my hair so it would foof out and big and foofy. It got these pictures. I'm like, that dude has some hair.
Yeah. Business up front, party in the back.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Love it. And that was all the rage. What's funny is the mullet's actually making a reoccurrence now.
It is.
For whatever reason. Like, these I don't know, these trends, the 80s trends, the high waist pants, like all that stuff is coming back. It's incredible.
Yeah, I don't think it'll come back with me.
It's like a bad rerun. No mullet?
No, I don't think so.
Hashtag Microsoft mullet. I mean, come on. That's pretty catchy. So, all right. Well, I know that going through our struggles as, now the eventual RAD Dads or the RAD Dads in Recovery, there was always something, usually pop culture-ish, that would make me just kind of smile no matter where I was at. It was usually a movie. Do you have a stupid movie or something that would always make you laugh?
Yeah, anything Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Love The Mask, Ace Ventura, or The Grinch. They just bust up laughing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad you brought this up. I've been thinking Ace Ventura for a long time. I've just been waiting for somebody to say that, actually.
Oh, yeah.
For whatever. Go ahead.
What's interesting is as I was preparing for our call today, I asked my kids, so what is it that you like the most about me? What? And they're like, Dad, you're just a goofball. You're just a goofball. I'm like, maybe that's why we like that show Ace Ventura or The Grinch so much, because he's just a dork.
Oh, yeah.
My kids love that the most,
A lovable dork, but absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, there's so many scenes, both 1 and 2.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of those ones that my family is, every family is weird in their own way, and that makes them really awesome. But my family is weird awesome in the way that the kids, my brother and sister and I, will quote those stupid movies to each other. And there's a lot of them in there. I'm sure we've done it back and forth with Ace Ventura. I'm trying to think of a couple ones that we would say back and forth, but I know the second one, like Shakaka, the bat. Yeah. Chicago. Oh, you're out of here.
Yep.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
So I would hope that being a RAD Dad has allowed you to recognize some of the struggles that maybe your parents went through. Can you identify maybe a story or something that, you put your parents through that was not funny then, but, now we can look back and be like, that, that's kind of funny now?
Yeah, I think that I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and my oldest brother is 10 years older than me, and he was kind of the troublemaker. And just when I was a little guy, 4 or 5 years old, of course I wanted to follow my brother, the rebel, and I did. I mean, he did all kinds of fun stuff with us. I used to have this little red wagon, and he had a little motorcycle, and we tied a rope to the wagon, and he dragged me around town with me in the wagon, like, ah!
This is great, except for when we go to stop.
Yeah, exactly. And there's one time we lived in a little small town in eastern Washington, and there was a dump, and we went up there to the dump and thought it'd be kind of fun to light a fire. Well, we caught the whole dump on fire. The whole sky was full of red and glowing as on fire, And then another time that I wanted to build a fort, so he said, "Hey, they're building a house right across the street." So we, at middle of the night, went over and stole a bunch of wood and built me a fort right across the street.
Like they would never know.
Yeah, older brother kind of stuff.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Older brothers kind of tend to goad the younger, less wise, I guess, siblings into doing all kinds of really awesome stuff.
Yeah, he's still my brother. I love him to death.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's it. That's what brothers do. That's what they are. Well, siblings, I guess. It extends to girls as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. So this is going to be a hard one to answer, actually, and not difficult that you won't have an answer for it, but that maybe there's no ammunition left, because this book basically chronicles everything about you. And the question is, tell us something about you that nobody or very few people might know about you. Yeah.
So for people that haven't read my book, they wouldn't know this, but this is actually kind of the precursor to my book. And that is that when I was 8 years old, we came home from school one day and the door was locked to our home.
Ooh.
And we ended up living in a park for a couple of days. And Mom said, "You know what? I can't take care of my kids. I got to give them up." And so we all went to different foster homes, and she went off to get sober from her alcoholism.
That is I don't have the words, man. We'll definitely get into that. Why not right now? Let's just dive into that. How did that? Obviously, I'm losing my words here. I'm running a podcast and I don't even have the words for it here.
Yeah.
Devastating is the only term that I can think of right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it was devastating. Unfortunately, that was sort of the cap to it all, because this is what I write about in my book, but my mom was an alcoholic, and my mom and my dad divorced when I was very, very young, 1 to 2 years old. And my mom struggled all those years until that day in the park when she had to give us up. And unfortunately, a lot of what happened to me as a child was really what brought me through a lot of the hell that I had to go through as an adult before I became the man that I am today.
Mm. Well, I'm just going to dive into a little bit more about that. I mean, your mom obviously tried to make things work. She had some issues, sounds like, of her own. I can't imagine that was going to be an easy choice for her to give you up and then to have you all split up.
Yeah. So my mom, she grew up in a kind of a bad home as well. I mean, she had a lot of problems as well. But I remember when I was maybe 4 years old, my mom was on her third marriage by then, and I woke up in the middle of the night and I could just hear these plates crashing and the yelling and screaming, and I came out in the living room and I saw my mom just in a rage throwing china at my stepdad.
Mm-hmm.
And I was scared to death. Like, what am I supposed to do? My mom, who's supposed to be taking care of me, she's throwing these plates and she's drunk, and my older sister was there. My other older sister was there. We didn't know what to do, and just full of fear. Overwhelmed with fear as a little boy. You can imagine a little boy 3 or 4 years old seeing that, and didn't know what to do. And I looked over at my sister, and my sister didn't know what to do either. And she just took a second. She said, "Jesus, please help us." And instantly, my mom passed out, and there was a total calm and a peace that filled our home.
Mm.
And I tell you, I wish I could say that was the last time that happened, but it wasn't. Alcoholism is a terrible thing.
Yeah,
and she had to be taken off to a mental hospital a couple of times in a straitjacket, and I watched all this stuff happen as a kid, and it just was never easy. And I think the thing that happened to me is that the very people, my parents, that are supposed to protect me the most, were not there when I needed them the most, and it instilled this great fear of abandonment in me.
Mm-hmm. This
fear of abandonment that would really dictate a lot of the awful behaviors I had later in my life.
Yeah. I don't know a lot about this, but it looks like in chapter 9, you talk about the pain of generational curses and it relates to alcoholism and that sort of thing. And, you mentioned earlier, your daughter has had a run-in with that as well. Yeah,
absolutely. So, so what I discovered, let's just kind of go back to the story about where I ended up. So I ended up getting married and having a daughter. And unfortunately, I wasn't very healthy at all.
Yeah.
I was very unhealthy. And my first wife and I got into a lot of arguments. And one night when my daughter was a month old, we got into a pretty bad argument. And she grabbed my daughter, Monica, and she started heading for the door. And immediately that thought that I'm being abandoned again, just like I was abandoned as a child,
mm-hmm.
It came to me, and I did something I regret for the rest of my life. I struck my wife with an open fist and took my baby away, and thank God that I ended up in a police car a couple minutes later in jail. Yeah. I'm not proud of that at all, but it was really a low point in my life. And what happened was I wanted to stop, but I couldn't stop. And the pain got so great, I couldn't change. Our marriage was going in the toilet. Pain got so great that in January of 1999, I separated from my wife. And I remember, this probably resonate with a lot of the people on the call or on the podcast today. I remember driving away, and my daughter Monica's 18 months old, waving goodbye to her daddy in the window. Tears streaming down my face as I'm abandoning my daughter, just like I had been abandoned.
Yeah.
And swore I'd never do.
Oh man, gut wrenching.
Yeah.
Biggest fear of mine going through kind of my own bomb crater was something very similar to that, where, I am now no longer 100% part of my son's life. And really kind of the fate of our relationship rests on a lot of things out of my control.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I know a lot of guys, and myself included, have had a lot of difficulty in following the correct path in the wake of that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Rad Dads, I want to take a very quick moment and let you know that I have a free 7-step guide for the newly single parent over on our website at www.weraddads.com. Capitalize on the wisdom that I've gained through this podcast and my own personal experiences. Go on over to any one of our show notes or other pages. This offer will pop up automatically. All you need to do is enter your name and email address, and this guide will be delivered directly to your email inbox. Go over there right now, today. Get your free 7-step guide now. Yours, absolutely free. So, okay, we started when you were 8 years old, and then, you know, we kind of pumped the ball forward to you were married and now separated. What the title of your book, Pain Drives Change.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? What instance did you decide that, you know, this was the message that you wanted to send to people? The story that you needed to tell?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I separated from my first wife, moved to the little house in South Seattle, in the slums of South Seattle. Mm-hmm. Seriously depressed, crying all the time, can't sleep, can't see my daughter, just miserable. And for whatever reason, 5 days later, I took out a camcorder and I set it on a tripod. And I started doing a video journal of myself with tears in my eyes talking about my situation. And somewhere along the lines, I said, you know what? I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm going to use my pain. I'm going to overcome this pain. I'm going to use it to help people one day. Mm. And I think that's where the seed was planted, that one day I'd write a book. And it just became so obvious to me. I had so many problems that I had to overcome. It became so obvious to me that if I accepted my pain and I worked through it, that the change would become automatic in my life. And the way that I like to describe it is if you take your hand and you put it on a hot stove, you don't sit there and think, you know, that's hot. I smell some burning flesh. I should probably pull it away. Mm-hmm. You don't have to think about it. You just pull it away. The change is automatic. And that's the way I think about pain in our lives is when we are in pain, if we allow that pain to motivate us to do the right thing, we end up in a better place. And that really is the story of my life and the story of the book. And tell story after story after story, which I do in the book, and we can talk about it today, about how that pain resulted in me being in a better place.
Wow. Yeah, well, probably not initially. You know, you probably, like me, you had to learn that lesson along the way.
Yeah, I do. I did have to learn the lesson. And, you know, there's a scripture from the Bible that really is kind of the foundation for the book. It's from the book of James. It says, "Consider it joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing the testing of your faith produces endurance." And it says, "Let endurance have its perfect result so that you'll be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." And I remember in that little house in South Seattle, I came across that scripture and I thought, how can I consider it joy in the midst of this pain? But then I read the second part of that scripture that says, knowing the testing of my faith produces endurance. And I would be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. And I realized that God uses our pain to transform us into the people that he wants us to be. And that's exactly what he did with me. He did not want me to be an abusing husband. He wanted me to be a strong man, a strong family man that would break the generational curses in my family. And it took that pain to do that for me.
Yeah. We were talking a minute ago. And first of all, this is kind of like, if you remember back a minute ago, you said you were thankful that you ended up in the back of the cop car, maybe for physical consequences, but maybe as just a sign like, hey, we need to figure out a better way here, you know? As you know, how did I end up in a cop car? Like, how did this all happen? Whose fault is it? And taking that actually, and man, assigning blame to yourself is something that is extremely difficult to do. But somehow you managed to do that within 5 days in a camcorder. That is amazing.
Yeah, you know, and I wish I could say it was that fast, because the truth be known that when I was in the cop car, the reason why I'm thankful as in the cop car is because I was very, very angry that night, and more damage could have been done.
Oh yeah,
but.
Yeah.
I remember, and I talk about this in my book, I remember sitting in the jail cell thinking, how could she do this to me?
Yeah.
How could she put me in this jail cell? This is her fault.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when I'm getting, and I remember her bailing me out, and when she bailed me out, saying, this is your fault that I was in there, not taking any responsibility for my action. Unfortunately, it took another year and a half from me being in jail until we separated. And I finally said, you know what? The pain is so great. I've got to make change. If I don't make change, I've lost my daughter, and I'm going to put her through the hell that I was through when I was growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. You hit on something too. It's just, it can always be worse. No matter what the situation, it can always be worse. But more than that, I resonate exactly with what you just said, in that you're blaming other people for what happened. You know, I'm not proud of that. That happened to me. You know, I blamed my son's mom for things that happened to me along the way. And it makes me cringe. I feel so incredibly sorry for having put all of us through that. You know, and every story has two sides, of course, but I will take complete responsibility for my role in that manner at that time.
Way to go, man.
I think that's, I think it's really important to do, to first of all recognize that you're doing that. It's really easy to assign blame to somebody. Oh, you forced me to do this. You did this to me. Or why did this happen? You know, why is all this stuff happening? People just don't like me. No, a lot of times you get what you put out there. And if you don't take any responsibility for your actions, if you don't have any humility for it, it just seems to perpetuate.
Yeah, you know, I was going to say, I don't know a lot about your story, but I'd be willing to bet you that when you were blaming her, things weren't getting much better.
No.
I bet you they were getting worse. I bet.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if you can shirk that responsibility, you can always shirk the responsibility for who's going to fix it.
Exactly.
Like,
there you go.
It's your problem, so you deal with it. And, you know, knowing, of course, obviously, hindsight, armchair quarterbacking, what have you, knowing what I know now, and how many times can we say that? You know, I think we talked about this earlier too, in the dichotomy of knowing, like, the advantage, Rad Dad's here. The advantage of where we are now is we know how bad it can be, right?
Oh yeah.
We've been down the way that we don't really want to go anymore. Or maybe we're there still, and we've decided, hey, there's a better way. And I'll tell you, there is. But it starts with you. It starts with your actions and your attitudes. But as long as you realize that, being in this negative place, you can find an absolutely amazing spot to be, just putting in the work.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. Well, there's so much there. And so, okay, you found yourself on the wrong side of the tracks, and what happens then?
Yeah. So, in the first chapter of my book, I call it The Pain of Being Alone.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't imagine the shame, or maybe you can. I'm sure people can imagine the shame that you experience when you've physically abused your wife multiple times. It is the most shameful thing I can possibly imagine. I hated myself. My friends called me Gumby. My stepchildren and my wife called me a monster. And that's the voice that I had in my head. You are a monster. You are a monster. You are a monster. Here I am, can't change, find myself in enormous pain. And I said, you know what? I've got to talk to somebody about this.
Mm-hmm.
And by the grace of God, I had a couple of men that I worked with that were very, very strong Christian men. And I was in deep pain, and I reached out to one of them. One of them, his name was Bob, and I said, hey, Bob, do you have some time to talk? And he said, yeah, let's go get a Coke. So we went out and we started talking, and I said, Bob, I've got something to tell you. He says, yeah, go ahead and tell me. I said, Bob, I'm separated from my wife. He said, thanks for sharing, Damon. And then I looked at him, I said, Bob, there's more. And I watched him very, very closely to see how he'd respond. I said, Bob, I'm separated because I'm abusing my wife. And I looked to see if he would judge me. And he didn't even flinch.
Mm.
He didn't judge me. He didn't flinch. He said, you know what? It's only by the grace of God that I've not done the same thing to my wife. And all of a sudden, that toxic shame that I was carrying started being relieved. And I could talk about it. And it didn't have the power on me anymore. And he became a very, very close friend. Bob and I are really almost best friends today.
Yeah.
And there was another man at work that I had the same conversation with him, and he didn't flinch either. And what I discovered is that God had put these two men in my life to carry me through this awful period of my life. I'd be at work struggling in tears, wanting to see my little girl, missing her, arguing with my wife, and Steve sat 2 offices down. And I'd get in my office, and I'd go in his office, and I'd say, do you have time? And it didn't matter what he was doing. He'd say, I have time. He'd turn off his computer, and we'd talk. And he'd encourage me. He'd help me do the right thing. He'd mentor me. A couple months later, he said, "You know what? I've got a room in my garage. It's not finished. You can live with us for a couple months." A couple months after that, Bob said, "You know what? You can park your motorhome in my backyard and live with us for a couple months." These guys carried me.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's because of them. That's why I reached out to you. It's because of other men in your life, people that have what you want, that are willing to help you, that I actually became who I am. Without them, I'd be a mess today.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know especially my first reaction was to just weather it, just be myself and be this placid facade, to everyone around me. Nothing's wrong. I can handle this sort of thing. I'm a man. But your story right here speaks to the power of brotherhood and the need to walk with other people who've either been there or just willing to just help you out with that sort of thing. Let me tell you what, Rad Dads, you cannot do this alone. If you're in the throes of it right now, if you're still feeling that anger and that aggression, if you're reeling, if there's any type of emotional turmoil whatsoever, I cannot stress enough to find a person, a group, a network. Reach out. I am always available, by the way. You can always email me. I'm there. But this is exactly why I started the We Rad Dads Facebook group too, right? To meet other people, not only going through it, but have gone through it and understand.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. There is, I tell you, if you don't have another man in your life to talk to, I talk about a subject in my book, Men's Secret Wars. The guy shares a statistic that fewer than 1 in 4 men have another man in their life that they could tell anything to.
Yeah. I believe it.
And I'm telling you, if you're one of those 3 out of 4 men that don't have another man, the most important thing you can do in your life is find those other men to talk to.
Yeah.
And if you're still married or you're separated, you're having problems with your marriage, here's what'll happen. When you have somebody else to talk to and vent that doesn't judge you, it detoxifies it so you can be stronger with your spouse or your girlfriend and not get into those toxic arguments because you're venting on this other person. They give you perspective. You must have other men in your life. You must have other men in your life. It's hard, but I'm with you.
Yeah. No, traditionally speaking, I've been taught, and this is the John Wayne effect. Everyone looks up to John Wayne, the Duke, like he's the man's man, right? You handle it. You're just knuckle down and rub some dirt on it. Yeah, that's all well and good, but this is not the way. That is not the way to handle this type of a severely emotional situation. This really deep and important time in your life where your family, as broken as it may be, is relying on you still. Your kids are still relying on you to find a way to make it work for them. I mean, that's the one thing that kind of, for me, kept pushing me forward. And I'm really happy that I not only have taken those steps, but I reach out and meet people. Like, I don't know how many times I can just thank my lucky stars that people like you come into my life. People like all of my guests, all the people that I talk to on Facebook, all the groups I have, my mastermind. Like, I am nothing without my group of men. I have a group of people that I rely on, and you need to be the person not only that can help other people through this whole thing, but that can reach out and say, "Hey, I need help with this," because we all need help, guys. We all need help.
Yeah, and let me just, we could talk about this rest of the podcast because this is it. Right. I mean, this is one of the most important things. If you don't start with this, you're not going to end up where you want to be. But years later, I went to an Anthony Robbins seminar, and he shared something that I'll never forget. He said, if you want to know the quality of your life, it's really, really easy. Look at the 5 people that are closest to you and look at the expectations they have of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That the person you become and the quality of your life will be directly correlated to the expectations those closest to you have of themselves.
So it's captured in this Jim Rohn quote that I always say. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with or you surround yourself with.
Absolutely you are.
So true. And another reason why I started the We RAD Dads program is that I did not want to be that guy who was known for, oh, my ex-wife, blah, blah, she's terrible, XYZ, fill in the blank, and always bitching about it, right? Those people, I need a detox from that. I need positivity. I need brotherhood, and we need to move forward because that ship has sailed.
Hey, I have so much respect for you because of the way of what you've done and how you're doing this in the midst of where you're at. Very, very proud of you for what you're doing.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you for recognizing me for that. But, hey, I'm not the only guy who's ever been through this stuff. I consider myself really lucky. And this goes back to our conversation about gratitude earlier.
Yeah, yeah.
If you know of somebody who could benefit from what we talk about, please share it with them. Text forward, tell them about it, email it, Facebook. And while we're talking about Facebook, be sure to join our group. We'd love to have you. I'm building a community, a tribe, a brotherhood of people united in similar struggle. And let's face it, we need all the help we can get as dads. If you enjoyed our podcast, I would really appreciate if you would leave a rating and review. Now, I've made it as easy as possible. Just go to our show notes and click on the Leave a Rating Review link. Or you could just go to iTunes and leave a rating and review there. Either one will take you to the same spot. Please let me know how I'm doing. Now, this helps us reach other rad dads out there. So with this simple step, you're helping introduce me to other people who need to hear our content. But before the call, Damon and I were talking about a lot of different things, self-fulfilling affirmations and gratitude. Now, maybe we could just kind of go over this again. So tell us about the power of those self-fulfilling affirmations. What's your experience with that?
Yeah. So I'll share a couple of things. So I'm separated for nearly 2 months, still severely depressed, and I'm sitting at church one day with my daughter on my lap, and I just start crying, and I just have this sense inside that I need to do something different, and I thought to myself, I need some goals. February 28th, 1999, I still remember the day. I need some goals in my life. If I don't have any goals, I'm not going to get there. And then I thought to myself, well, who do I know that knows about goal setting? Well, that would be Bob, the same Bob I talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. So at the time, my wife had a restraining order against me, and so I couldn't go to the house, but I had Monica, my daughter. And he invited me over to his house, and he has 8 children. And I remember going to his house and sitting there and thinking, they are not fighting. What's going on? This is not normal. I don't understand this. They're like talking and they're eating together, and they're not. This isn't normal. Yeah. I don't get this,
Yeah.
And he said, hey, Damon, let's go downstairs. So Monica, my daughter, stayed upstairs. She was about 2 at the time, and they played with her and went downstairs. And Bob said, let's work on some goals. He said, imagine this scenario. He said, imagine you have a clear glass of water, and that water represents all of the positives in your life, and you hold the glass of water and you can see very, very clearly. He said, then imagine that you have a red dye, and that red dye represents the negatives in your life. And you take a drop of red dye or a couple drops of red dye in that clear glass of water, what happens?
Yeah.
Well, it gets cloudy and you can't see, and it's all the negative energy happens. And he says, that's exactly it. And I said, I've got so much red dye in my life, I can't see it. It's like red, it's not water. Mm-hmm. He says, so what are you going to do about it? And I said, well, I can't dump out the water, and I can't filter the red dye. I don't know what to do about it. He says, the only thing you can do about it is put more positive in. I said, what do you mean? He says, imagine that same amount of red dye, but now it's in a pitcher of water, or a 5-gallon bucket,
right,
or a swimming pool, or a lake, or the ocean. I'm like, wow. Yeah. My solution here is to put more water in. And so I started surrounding myself with positive people. I started reading books and teaching and being positive, and all of a sudden it was just like this chain reaction kicked in. And then he said, what you have to do is you have to sort of write the dream of what you want your life to be. You got to have something to pull you forward.
Yeah.
And let's write that dream out, and then let's make out these unifying life principles that sort of define who you want to be. Not who you are, but who you want to be. He said, what are some of the words that you use to describe those? And I said, well, I want to be a man of integrity, and I want to be a godly man, and I want to be a good father, and I want to be a good husband. And we wrote those down, and he said, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take that dream that you just wrote, and I want you to take those unifying life principles, and I want you to read those out loud every day. I'm like, really? That's kind of crazy, but I did.
Yeah.
And so I'd start saying, instead of that voice in my head that said, you're a monster, I would say, you're a man of integrity. You're a godly man. You're a good father. And I'd look in the mirror with my eyes in the mirror, and I'd say these things, and all of a sudden I'd start believing it. And what I found was within just a couple of days, I would be in a situation where I had decisions to make.
Yeah.
And in the past, I would make those decisions based on emotion and how I felt, and it would get me in a bad place. But now I would ask the question, is this the way that a man of integrity would act? I'd say, no, that's not how a man of integrity would act. We'll act with integrity. And my behavior started to change.
Yeah.
And within a month, 2 months, 3 months, all of a sudden, that monster that I was gone. And I was a new man because of this dream and these affirmations that I continued to reinforce in my life. It's amazingly powerful.
It is so powerful. You know, the power of suggestion, especially to yourself. Say it out loud. You know, often when I talk about things that are important to me, I'm talking to my own dad or my support network. Sometimes even when I'm just hearing myself say that stuff, I come up with the solution. And it's been churning around in my head for hours, maybe days.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden when I hear myself say it, it's like, oh, okay. This positive affirmation thing really just does work. That's all there is to it. You know, it comes down to gratitude as well. You know, I practice gratitude morning and night. When I close my eyes at night, I'm thankful for all the things that I do have. And I don't worry about the things that I don't. I just be happy with what you do, because it could always be worse, you know? And these positive affirmations, this is the reason I always ask, and we'll get to this, by the way, but we always ask about bucket list items. You know, what's your bucket list for life? What's your bucket list for your kids? We'll get to that question, by the way. So spoiler alert. Because I want people to start seeing the positive future that you can actually get. You can get there. You can do that. It's going to take work, but you can do it.
Yep. Absolutely. I swear by it. You know, the dream that I mentioned to you, it was, I wrote this dream in 1999 that I'd one day have a beautiful family, and I'd live with a home with a 100-year-old shade tree, and you know, my wife would be cooking dinner, and we'd have dinner together as a family, and I'd put my kids to bed, and I'd read to them, and we'd get up in the next morning and do the same thing. And I thought, never in a million years is this going to happen. Never. I'm separated from my wife. There's a restraining order. My life's a mess. I'm living in the slums of South Seattle. It'll never happen. But I wrote it out, and I did what he said to do. And I kid you not, there's a 100-year-old shade tree in my yard.
Nice.
And I had dinner with my kids tonight, and we talked about this podcast. And I went upstairs, and I kissed them goodnight, and I prayed with them before they went to bed. And I do it every day. It's the life I never, ever dreamed possible. But because I wrote it down, and I read it, and I believed it, it came to pass.
Yeah, that's the reciprocal. That's it'll never happen if you keep saying that sort of thing. If you can't silence your inner hater, your inner critic, whatever you want to call it. If you can't silence that, if you can't turn that energy positive, that's exactly what's going to happen. You will never get a 100-year-old shade tree. You will never fill in the blank.
Yeah.
But when you start telling yourself, you know what, I can do this, that's when you're going to start really turning a corner on it and seeing those changes. Awesome.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
awesome. These are just super powerful. Go ahead.
Oh, just as a sidebar on that, what I started doing about 5 years ago is every year at the end of the year, I'll go out and I'll reflect on my previous year.
Yeah.
And after reflecting, I will write out my dream for the following year as if though it had just happened. And I've been doing that for 4 or 5 years now. And I kid you not, 75 to 80% of what I write down comes to pass every year because I've written it down and I believed it.
Wow. Yeah, there it is. There it is, Rad Dads. The power of paradigm and positive thinking. Get it down on paper and then take steps towards it. It's not going to happen. Rome wasn't built in a day, as they say, right?
Yep, absolutely, man.
But it started with a plan. Wow. There's so much here. There's so much. I really wanted to ask you some more about, things that I have uncovered in your book, because there's tables, there's pictures, there's all, yeah, it's chock full of all kinds of awesome stuff. And one thing I did notice about the book is that all the titles are either the pain of something or the joy of something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why are those reciprocals? Are those completely opposites?
Yeah, I think it's in the beginning there was a lot of the pain of because my life was filled with pain.
Right.
But over time, or as the book progresses, you get more of the joy of because the pain wasn't so great.
Yeah.
But I was still making wise choices in my pain to increase the joy in my life.
Yeah. That's awesome. And that speaks to exactly to what we were just talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, so cool. So
Yeah.
cool. So many wins to you. And I want to recognize you for how far you've come. I mean, we haven't really scratched the surface of everything that's in there and everything that's in your past, because it's not as simple. I'm holding up the quotes here. It's not as simple as just what we talked about, as if that were simple. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I will share this with the readers because I think it's important that everybody knows that since the day that I separated from my wife, there's not been another incidence of domestic violence. It's been nearly 20 years since that happened. And I talk about this in chapter 2 a little bit, and it goes to the power of having wise counselors in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So the marriage counselor that I was going to, actually, when I was going to weekly domestic violence counseling, I'd been there for a year and a half, and I was sitting there thinking to myself, why am I not getting it better? Something's not right. I'm not getting better. And I asked the counselor, I said, is it possible that I'm bipolar? And he looked at me and said, no, you're not bipolar. You're just trying to make excuses. And I thought, really? Okay. Well, fortunately, I didn't stop there. My marriage counselor said, I think you should go see your doctor because I think that you might be bipolar. So I went and saw my doctor, and my doctor said, so tell me about some things. And I told him, he said, you know what? I think you're bipolar. I said, really? Well, tell me about it. He says, well, you told me that you struggled with abusing your wife. I said, yeah, I did. And he said, well, here's what happens with people that are bipolar. There's a chemical in your brain that says between stimulus and response, it says pause. And with people that are bipolar, that chemical isn't as strong. I said, whoa, this is crazy, because I get angry and I couldn't stop myself. There was no pause. I couldn't figure it out. And he said, that's very typical for people with bipolar. He says, there's a medication called Depakote. And what it does is it puts that pause in place. I said, tell me what to do. I'll do it. I did exactly what he said to do. Excuse me. Never again has there been an issue with domestic violence.
Wow.
Never again. Now, that wasn't the only reason I had, and I talk about this in my book, I had dozens and dozens of things I had to work through. I had to work through pain with my father and pain with my mother and my own issues and my unifying life principles. And I had to work through a lot of stuff to get where I was today. But that discovery that there was a biological issue that was contributing to this shifted my life.
Yeah.
And for the listeners out there, there's some statistics I came across that said a large portion of people that struggle with addiction actually have a mental disorder like a bipolar. And if you're struggling with something like that, I would just encourage you to go see your doctor and see if there's any possibility that you may have bipolar or ADD or something along those spectrum. And if he says treat yourself for that, treat yourself for it, because you cannot become the person that you want to be if you're stricken with these biological issues.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, it didn't sound like you started there, but that was kind of an epiphany along the way that really just propelled you forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yep. It's just one of many ingredients to transform me.
Yeah. And with anything, I think that's the absolute case. There's never the blue pill, or pardon the reference. I was going Matrix, but I think I went somewhere else instead. The magic pill, I guess I should say. There's no magic pill, but there's a bunch of little tips, tools, and tactics that we can utilize along the way. And man, you have just unloaded a ton of nuggets on us as well. I had no idea. Obviously it's not something you advertise, but man, I really appreciate your open, your genuine vulnerability here, just out there.
I appreciate that. I'll tell you a little secret. When I sat down to write the book, I didn't know if I was going to talk about this piece of it because I didn't want the world to know about it.
Yeah.
Really? This guy abused his wife? Yeah, he did, and he's very ashamed of it. But it was that pain that propelled me to be a completely different person that maybe I can share with the rest of the world to keep them from doing the same thing I did.
Yeah. Do you think saying it out loud, do you think saying it in the book, do you think being open with it, voicing it to other people has basically provided the accountability to yourself to either take steps to avoid it or either to process it? How does that voicing of this work for
that's
you?
a really good point. I talked about it a little bit earlier, but I'll say it again. I think when you confess something,
Mm-hmm.
it loses its power, no matter what it is. If you're struggling with alcoholism, if you're struggling with sexual addiction, if you're struggling with domestic violence, whatever it is, when you voice it, it loses its power.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's so
Absolutely.
scary before you do. I've been there too. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've felt that feeling. And, wow, I couldn't agree more. Rad Dads, be genuine with yourself. Really dig. If you want to make those changes, you can. You just need to be absolutely honest with yourself.
Yes.
And then go surround yourself with good people.
Yeah.
Those are the two beginning steps.
You got it, bud.
Wow. So awesome. Okay. We're gonna back off a little bit of this. We're gonna get into the kind of quick Q&A. We're gonna find out a little bit more about some upbeat stuff. So, hey, Rad Dads, I want you to take these nuggets. I want you to utilize them. I want you to really just ponder on them. If you're in the trenches, like I say I am too, if you're there, if you're in the throes of it, if you're in even denial, if you're saying, oh, that's not me, really consider whether or not it's you. These are the tools that I'm trying to bring to you guys, the resources, these little inklings, these elements of change that can really give you that life that you dream of, that right now your inner hater's telling you, you can't have that. You're not good enough for that. You can. You just need to work at it, and this is where it starts. So
you absolutely can, and I'm hoping that my book and my story and maybe this podcast, whatever I can do to give you that hope, you can be in a better place.
Yes, absolutely. This show is sponsored by audibletrial.com. Do you find yourself strapped for time? Is reading books on your list of things to do? Was it on your New Year's resolution list? Yeah, mine too. Well, guess what? Neither of us have time. Audible.com is a simple solution to that. If you like podcasts, it's a no-brainer. Listen to an audiobook in your car. And right now, with our special link, audibletrial.com/WeRadDads, you can get a 30-day free trial and a free book. That's a free book. You can't beat free. Take this opportunity to maximize on your learning potential and squeeze learning into your everyday moments. That's audibletrial.com/WeRadDads. And in case that's too much, go to our show notes or any page on the website and click on the Audible banner. Back to being a dad currently.
Yeah.
What is your best dad skill or superpower?
I asked my kids that, and my older daughter said it's wisdom, and my youngest daughter said it's being goofy.
You mentioned goofy earlier, but
yeah. Well, so here's what's interesting. My older daughter wrote when she was younger, said that my best power was being goofy. And I just don't think that you can be goofy enough with your kids. I mean, it's fun and it's just it endears you to them. And I said, what do you mean by being goofy? They're like, well, you sing these silly songs, or when we're out in a boat and you're boating, you turn the boat to try and run down the seagulls, or you sing these silly songs like, or you take us out to ice cream and you say, don't tell mom.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just classic dad moves right there.
Oh yeah, man. It's fun stuff. Be goofy.
Yeah. Be goofy. Be smiling. Create those memories.
Yeah.
When when they're reading your eulogy, and it's funny, it's a little exercise here, right? Nobody really wants to think about that, but when they're reading your eulogy, when they read my eulogy, let's go there. When they read my eulogy, I want people to be like, do you remember the time that Walter fill in the blank? And everyone just chuckles. That's my legacy that I want to move, that I want to have. And be goofy. Take every moment to be the best person possible to your kids, to everyone, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And, kind of along those lines, similar question, but being goofy, right? What's one of the unique things that I do with my family? So I came across this book when I was in my recovery, and it was called An Elephant in the Living Room. Mm-hmm. And they studied adults that had come from alcoholic children. When they were children, their parents were alcoholics. Mm-hmm. And they said they found this unique thing that kind of predicted whether or not these kids were going to be struggling with alcoholism as adults. And it boiled down to family rituals.
Interesting.
Family rituals. How strong were the family rituals? Like, did you have dinner together 4 or 5 times a week? Did you pray with your kids at night? Were birthdays celebrated or were they chaos? Those kinds of things. And so my wife has done a great job of implementing these rituals, but along the lines of being goofy, one day I said, how could I even make this more automatic? And I thought to myself, Tickle Tuesday. Right? And so I said, every Tuesday I'm going to tickle my kids. And so we started every Tuesday tickling my kids, and we just laugh and tickle until you just can't stand it anymore. And it got so much fun, we started doing these tickle tests where we'd tickle each other at different parts and measure how much tickle there was. And then we did the tickle test on the tickle table. And then we did Trampoline Tuesday where we did the tickle test,
Yeah.
We took that idea of a family ritual. We made it goofy with Tickle Tuesday.
Nice.
And then we expanded it to being every day of the week, right? So we have these rituals that are every day of the week that we try to do to just sort of build this rhythm or this kind of these what's the word I'm thinking about? These rituals into our lives. Yeah. And they mean the world to the kids. Rituals, standard traditions, hugely important. Hugely important.
Awesome. Nuggets galore. Man, I get so much value out of, talking to all of my guests, and every single interview I do, I'm just completely blown away. So, man, talk about bestowing wisdom. And this is the literal tip of the iceberg. I mean, go pick up the book, Pain Drives Change. Listen to the voice here that I'm interviewing. Damon is at peace. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can. He's at peace. And after all of the turmoil and everything, starting at before 8 years of age, and now to huge congratulations to the level that you've reached, sir.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know. I'm just. It's very rare that I don't have the words, but I guess I don't have the words.
That's all right, man. I appreciate it.
So, okay, we went over your best dad superpower, which is being goofy and rituals. What is your worst, and how do you mitigate it?
Did I tell you I wrote my book in 45 days?
You told me that. I don't think we discussed it
Guess what? That's my worst dad characteristic, is I get into this mode called hyper-focused. Uh-huh. And I am so focused that I just block or tune everything out. I get edgy, I get irritable, and I'm like, I got to finish this book in 45 days, or I've got to finish this email or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, hyper-focused. I'm working pretty hard to overcome that. So my greatest strength is my greatest weakness.
Yeah. Yeah. You just got to manage it appropriately.
Yeah.
Interesting. And Rad Dads out there, just because the book was written in a truncated period of time doesn't mean it's just this, this kind of mediocre work. I mean, I don't plug this because I'm not getting anything out of this, right? There's no like side deal here, right? I'm honestly enamored with the book itself and the concepts inside. So highly, highly recommend that you go over there and find it. And where do we find it, by the way?
Yeah, you can just get it on my website, paindriveschange.com.
Uh-huh.
And if you're not sure if you want it, you can just go up there and I'll give you a free first chapter for free, and decide if you're interested or not. So
you cannot beat free. Rad Dads, take advantage of that. Go over to paindriveschange.com and go over there and check it out. I guarantee it's for you. If you're hearing this, it's for you.
Awesome. Well,
awesome. Oh yeah, absolutely. You know what? One more question. It's the one I promised. What is your bucket list item for you and your children?
Yeah, it's a great question. I am so proud of my daughter, Monica, 18.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so proud of her. 3 years ago, she was stuck in addiction. And now she's a camp counselor to 12 to 14, 5 and 6-year-olds at the Y. And she was selected to go to Thailand and teach English to students in Thailand next winter. And I want to go over there and hang out with her and ride elephants and eat Thai food.
Do that
next year. Yeah.
Do that. It is amazing. I have been lucky enough to go to Thailand, and it is everything you heard it. It should be. It's amazing. Yeah. Hey, congratulations to you and to her, by the way, for the sobriety, for the family involvement. Like, that does not happen on its own. Much like, finding your way from being a single estranged father to finding a family situation that's working. It does not happen on your own. You got to rely on your people, your tribe, your family. So I know that. Wow, I couldn't imagine after everything you've been through, then you have to experience this with your daughter. So I'm very, very happy that you guys have all landed on the other side safely.
I appreciate that. I actually talk about that in chapter 11. I convinced her to write a letter in chapter 11, so she actually put her story in chapter 11 about how we got through this together.
That's great. That's what family is. That's what family is.
Yeah. And awesome. Dads, let me say this. There's a book I came across called Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. And the author of the book says that the woman that your daughter will become is directly correlated to the strength of the relationship she has with her dad.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that so many times.
And I'm telling you, dads, love your daughters.
Mm-hmm.
Love your daughters. It was because of the love that I poured into my daughter when she was a child, and because of the relationship that we built, that we were able to get through that addiction together.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. Wow. So much. I have so many more questions, but we're bumping time here.
Hey.
I really, really wanted to thank you for joining us, and I wanted to open up my platform to you to say, whatever you want to say. If you have any thanks or you want to recognize somebody or group people, go for it.
Well, hey, I appreciate that. First of all, I want to thank you, Walter. I am just got to know you and talk to you on the phone, and you've really, really impressed me with where you're at and how you're wanting to be the best dad you can be. If I had been as aggressive as you are right now, I'd be in a much better place much, much quicker. You're doing exactly the right things. I mean, it's the books that you read and the people that you spend time with that will determine who you are in 5 years. And you're surrounding yourself with those kinds of people. So kudos to you. And then to the listeners, you've got a resource here with this podcast. And the world today, there's so many resources available to you. Just take advantage of them. And if you are in a situation and you find yourself alone, reach out to somebody that you think you can trust and open up to them and become a friend. It will transform your life.
Absolutely. Well said. And life-saving at times as well.
Yeah.
First, thank you so much for recognizing kind of where I'm at and what I'm doing here. And that's exactly, I don't do it for the recognition, guys. I do it to help people, and I'm really happy that I'm accomplishing that. So, oh man, we could go on and on and on, but maybe we'll have to come back and do another episode, or maybe a catch-up episode or something like that. So you mentioned resources. Rad Dads, I want to tell you, every and anything we talk about is very often, in fact, almost always, at the show notes at www.weraddads.com. So if you want to know more, contact with the guest, all of the guest contacts are there. All of the resources that we talk about, all of, the links to the book, and a lot of other stuff too, actually. So go on over there, check it out, utilize, take me up on this stuff. It's free. You can't be free.
Awesome.
Damon Stoddard, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk to myself and the Rad Dads out there. And, man, just, I'm really loving the way I'm kind of we're growing this network together of awesome people. And come join us. Come join us over at the We Rad Dads Facebook, guys. Damon, I've said it enough. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, man. Keep up the great work.
Holy cow. Absolutely speechless. And, you know, I say that occasionally. I just cannot believe the amount of change that Damon endured in his entire life from an age of 4. But how he was able to take and grapple that, and not always successfully, by the way, but then start to change in a positive way, see what was wrong and fix the little pieces along the way. Small change. It was said by one of my guests. It was Richard Raposa said that little tweaks make big change. Go back to my Herculitis episode. Change is the only constant in life. And boy, let me tell you, that's the case. Now, I've learned a ton just talking to all these people, all my guests, and Damon is no different. It seems that every single conversation I learned so much more, and I really hope you do too. So let me know how I'm doing. Contact me, Walter at We Rad Dads. Give me the thumbs up. Give me the thumbs down. Hey, I'm all about honest communication here. All right? That's what we're building. We're building a trusting brotherhood. I want to know if I'm failing you, if I'm serving you, if I'm giving you enough, or if I'm just overloading you. I don't know. You know, reach out. Reach out on the Facebook group or send me an email. It's up to you. And you know, while you're on the internets, go over, subscribe to the podcast, and then leave me a rating and review. It's really simple. Just an honest rating and review. If it's not 5 stars, it's not 5 stars. Of course, I'd like the opportunity to fix it so that it is 5 stars. Now, I really appreciate you taking me along for the ride today. I love having interaction with my community, and I love the fact that, you know, I'm helping other people because, quite frankly, this all helps me too. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm in the trenches with you, Rad Dads. So continue doing the best you can. Keep putting your best foot forward. Keep fighting the good fight. Stay up, stay connected, and stay rad, dads. Have a great week. Well, that's it for this episode of We Rad Dads. I sincerely thank you for joining us. Don't forget to look us up at www.weraddads.com. There you can find links to our Facebook page and Twitter account. Got a question or comment? It may be featured. Email me, Walter, at weraddads.com. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for joining us. And remember, stay up, stay connected, and stay rad, dads.